Every man must do to things alone. He must do his own believing and his own dying. If we seek paradise outside ourselves, we cannot have paradise in our hearts. I like to be alone, but I hate being lonely. He is never less at leisure than when at leisure, nor less alone than when he is alone. And in the end, all I learned was how to be strong, alone. I wish I could show you when you are lonely or in darkness the astonishing light of your own being. Spend some time alone every day. No one saves us but ourselves. No one can and no one may. We ourselves must walk the path. There is a magic in walking alone and thinking alone. If there is no one to contact you around, the universe starts contacting you. Laugh and the world laughs with you, snore and you sleep alone. Nothing can bring you peace but yourself. It's easy to stand with the crowd. It takes courage to stand alone. Sometimes you find yourself in the middle of nowhere, and sometimes in the middle of nowhere you find yourself. I restore myself when I'm alone. When you learn how to be alone, you'll discover the difference between alone and lonely. Being alone has a power that very few people can handle. Those who fly solo have the strongest wings. The greatest thing in the world is to know how to belong to oneself. Loneliness is sad, aloneness is blissful. It's far better to be unhappy alone and unhappy with someone. So far, I enjoy being alone. My soul is at peace in the silence. We come into this world alone, and we leave the same way. I can be alone without being lonely. In fact, those times of solitude are necessary respite for a beleaguered soul, set upon by the pressures of life. I need to take whatever moments I can to just be still. Better to be with no one than to be with the wrong one. Solitude is independence. Standing alone is better than standing with people who don't value you. Alone doesn't mean lonely. It just means alone. It just means that for now you're on your own, and that's not a terrible thing. I wish I could show you when you are lonely or in darkness the astonishing light of your own being. Sitting alone, sleeping alone, acting alone. Let the diligent one enjoy the forest, taming the self alone. We're born alone, we live alone, we die alone. Only through our love and friendship can we create the illusion for the moment that we're not alone. There are some places in life where you can only go alone. Embrace the beauty of your solo journey. Learn to be alone and to like it. There is nothing more empowering or freeing than learning to like your own company. The strongest man in the world is he who stands most alone. Once you start loving your own presence, you stop chasing people in your life. Sometimes you just need to be alone and let your tears out. I'm learning a lot about myself being alone. I have a good life, I remind myself. There are plenty of people who love me. They're just not around at the moment. All alone. Whether you like it or not, alone is something you'll be quite a lot. My alone feels so good, I'll only have you if you're sweeter than my solitude. Being alone has nothing to do with how many people are around. Your life will get better when you realize it's better to be alone than to chase people who don't really care about you. To live alone is the fate of all great souls. Sometimes you need to be alone, not to be lonely, but to enjoy your free time being yourself. As I get older, I'm more and more comfortable being alone. Happiness is being alone with your own thoughts. I have to be alone very often. I'd be quite happy if I spent from Saturday night until Monday morning alone in my apartment. That's how I refuel. Life could be wonderful if people would leave you alone. Sometimes you need to sit lonely on the floor in a quiet room in order to hear your own voice and not let it drown in the noise of others. Without great solitude, no serious work is possible. Sometimes you just need a break in a beautiful place, alone, to figure everything out. The soul that sees beauty may sometimes walk alone. You are never alone if you can talk to your conscience. But there it is, everyone is alone for life, and maybe that's not such a bad thing. I am not alone in my aloneness. I love to be alone. I never found the companion that was so companionable as solitude. Look at the sky. We are not alone. The whole universe is friendly to us and conspires only to give the best to those who dream and work. People in love always tried to match the singles together, but what they didn't realize was that some people were meant to be alone. There was nothing wrong with that. Until you get comfortable with being alone, you'll never know if you're choosing someone out of love or loneliness. Some people can't stand being alone. I love solitude and silence, but when I come out of it, I'm a regular talking machine. It's all or nothing for me. The best part about being alone is that you really don't have to answer to anybody. You do what you want. The great virtue of being alone is that your mind can go its own way. If you want to be strong, learn to enjoy being alone. If you want to be happy, learn to be alone without being lonely. Learn that being alone does not mean being unhappy. The world is full of plenty of interesting and enjoyable things to do and people who can enrich your life. What has really happened when you feel alone is that you've abandoned yourself. You have stopped taking care of your own basic needs. You don't value yourself. You don't listen to your own thoughts, and you don't take care of your physical, emotional, or spiritual self. This is what is causing you to feel alone. You have abandoned you. I'm not much, but I'm all I have. In solitude, the mind gains strength and learns to lean upon itself. You only grow when you are alone. My favorite hobby is being alone. I like to be alone. I also like dancing, fishing, playing poker sometimes, and vegetable gardening. Corn, tomatoes, cucumbers. I have a big garden every year. By all means use sometimes to be alone. Salute thyself. See what thy soul doth wear. If you make friends with yourself, you'll never be alone. Being alone doesn't necessarily mean loneliness. People are great, but being alone is wonderful. I prefer the silence of alone and the sounds of nature. Some steps need to be taken alone. It's the only way to really figure out where you need to go and who you need to be. Truth is, I'm generally happiest when it's just me. It's okay to be madly in love with yourself. In order to be open to creativity, one must have the capacity for constructive use of solitude. One must overcome the fear of being alone. Don't feel alone, because there is always someone out there who loves you more than you can imagine. To be alone is to be different, and to be different is to be alone. Loneliness expresses the pain of being alone, and solitude expresses the glory of being alone. We are all alone, born alone, die alone, and in spite of true romance magazines, we shall all someday look back on our lives and see that, in spite of our company, we were alone the whole way. I do not say lonely, at least not all the time, but essentially and finally alone. This is what makes your self-respect so important. And I don't see how you can respect yourself if you must look in the hearts and minds of others for your happiness. I think it's good for a person to spend time alone. It gives them an opportunity to discover who they are and to figure out why they are always alone. When I get lonely these days, I think, so be lonely, Liz. Learn your way around loneliness. Make a map of it. Sit with it for once in your life. Welcome to the human experience. But never again use another person's body or emotions as a scratching post for your own unfulfilled yearnings. Being alone when one's belief is firm is not to be alone. Alone had always felt like an actual place to me, as if it weren't a state of being, but rather a room where I could retreat to be who I really was. Nothing else so destroys the power to stand alone as the habit of leaning upon others. If you lean, you will never be strong or original. Stand alone or bury your ambition to be somebody in the world. Being solitary is being alone well. Being alone luxuriously immersed in doings of your own choice, aware of the fullness of your own presence rather than of the absence of others, because solitude is an achievement. There are worse things than feeling alone, things like being with someone and still feeling alone. I think it's very healthy to spend time alone. You need to know how to be alone. You need to know how to be alone and not be defined by another person. If you are never alone, you cannot know yourself. Standing alone doesn't mean I am alone. It means I'm strong enough to handle things all by myself. The sun is alone too, and she's still shining. The hardest walk you can make is alone, but it's the walk that will make you stronger. And then I think that maybe I was designed to be alone. Loneliness is an emotion, and being alone can be a choice. Never say you are alone, for you are not alone. Your God and your genius are within. Most women would not be happy being me. People say, "But you're alone." But I don't feel alone. I feel very unalone. A man can be himself only so long as he is alone, and if he does not love solitude, he will not love freedom, for it is only when he is alone that he is really free. It is far better to be alone than to wish you were. All men's miseries derive from not being able to sit in a quiet room alone. Thanks for watching. Which quote do you prefer? Let us know your favorite quotes in comments.